I can still feel the tremor in my chest as I stepped onto the balcony of my tiny Brooklyn apartment. The sun was just cresting over the East River, painting the water with orangey pink hues that shimmered across the skyscrapers of Manhattan. In 10 minutes I would be on a call for the wellness retreat I had spent the past 6 months planning. But right now my father's words echoed in my mind. She ruins everything. My finger hovered above the phone screen as I scrolled through the confirmation email. The sleek logo of Serenity Shores Retreat glowing reassuringly against the gray light of dawn. I was 25, fresh out of a career stagnation that had left me feeling hollow, and determined to prove that I could take control of my own destiny. But hearing Dad's voice, resentful and outright hostile, shattered the calm I had worked so hard to cultivate. I closed my eyes and took a deliberate breath, allowing the cool morning air to fill my lungs. My apartment, only 2 rooms including a kitchenette and walk-in closet, had become my sanctuary over the last year. I filled it with eucalyptus candles, silk linens, and a monstera plant I'd rescued from a discount nursery on Flatbush Avenue. That plant was thriving despite my black thumb, and I like to think it symbolized my own resilience. I opened the retreat brochure again, tracing the images of white sand beaches and yoga platforms suspended over crystal clear waters in my mind. I pictured myself practicing sun salutations as the ocean breeze whispered through the palms. The brochure promised digital detox, guided meditation, and communal meals centered around organic, locally sourced ingredients. It was exactly what I needed to reset my internal compass after months of ambition-fueled burnout. My phone buzzed with a text from my best friend, Elena. Good luck today. I'm so proud of you. I typed back a quick thank you and wondered if she understood what was at stake. She knew my dad had never supported my decision to quit my junior marketing role at a major firm. He saw it as throwing away security. He often lamented that I was chasing flaky dreams when I could have been climbing the corporate ladder alongside my peers. Our relationship had grown strained after I announced I would finance this retreat myself using savings from a small inheritance. He accused me of selfishness and irresponsibility, claiming that I was throwing money down a hole. Even Mom had tried to mediate, reminding him that a mental health break was nothing to scoff at. But his last text had been cold. You think spa weekends make up for a real career? She just ruins everything. I shut down my phone, unwilling to cede another ounce of my fragile confidence. At precisely 7:00 a.m., I tapped the Zoom link on my laptop. The host's face appeared in a warmly lit room decorated with driftwood sculptures and macrame hangings. She greeted me with a smile that felt both comforting and slightly theatrical, as if she were used to performing Serenity on camera. Behind her, a whiteboard listed the day's schedule, arrival orientation, grounding circles, breathwork sessions, lunch and afternoon beach walks. Welcome, Nadia, she said, mispronouncing my name at first before catching herself. We're thrilled to have you join us at Serenity Shores. I swallowed the sudden lump in my throat, feeling more exposed than I had anticipated. Hosting 20 strangers in this intimate virtual space felt daunting, but somehow it also felt like a lifeline. I clicked the join audio button and straightened my posture, determined to embody the calm I craved. As the host guided us through a brief breathing exercise, I closed my eyes and tried to imagine the salty tang of ocean air filling my lungs. Below me, the city pulsed with life, honking taxis, distant sirens, neighbors yelling good morning. But up here, suspended between sky and water, I felt untethered from those rhythms. I allowed the host's voice, gentle and unwavering, to anchor me back to my intention. By the time we concluded, my mind had quieted enough to absorb the host's next words. Before we move on, she said, voice crisp with anticipation, I have one exciting announcement. My heart stuttered. What could possibly top this? The host paused for dramatic effect, and I leaned forward. Then the words came. Our retreat this year is sponsored in full by one very generous participant, Nadia. You are our benefactor, the one who made this experience possible for everyone here. Shock froze me mid-breath. I stared at the screen, my mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for water. A flurry of reactions coursed through me: pride, confusion, panic, triumph, elation warred with dread. Would everyone resent me now? I had intended to fund my own escape, not to bankroll a crowd of strangers. Yet as the host smiled and the other participants began clapping with genuine enthusiasm, I realized this unveiling was as deliberate a ritual as the yoga sun salutation itself. I was officially in the spotlight, responsible for the vibe, for the energy, for the success of this journey. I sank back into my chair, heart pounding against the laptop's trackpad. A swirl of anticipation and dread knotted inside me, but beneath it all, a spark of exhilaration ignited. I was ready to step beyond my father's shadow. I woke before sunrise on the second day of the retreat, my mind buzzing at the memory of yesterday's surprise announcement that I, Nadia, was the benefactor of Serenity Shores. My heart pounded as I slid out of bed on the raised platform of my rustic beachfront cabin. Sea salt still clung to my skin from the meditation pool last evening, and the faint cry of gulls drifted through the screened windows. Clad in soft yoga pants and an oversized pullover, I tiptoed past other cabins toward the communal hall, determined to show up fully present despite the weight of unexpected attention. Though I felt a rush of pride at funding this experience, I also experienced an unexpected twinge of stage fright. The moment I recognized that every participant now viewed me as their silent sponsor, I felt exposed. I reminded myself to breathe. Inhaling the humid tropical air as I approached the gleaming wooden doors, I paused, smoothing my hair, and stepped inside with a confident smile plastered on my face, ready to lead by example and shed the self-doubt I still carried from my father's harsh judgment. The communal hall was bathed in warm morning light, filtering through bamboo blinds. A long driftwood table stretched along the center, adorned with ceramic bowls brimming with fresh mango slices, acai granola bowls, and herbal tea steeping in glass teapots. I greeted the retreat participants by name as I found a seat near the center, determined to bridge any gap between sponsor and fellow traveler. Elena, my best friend, waved excitedly from across the table, beaming with pride. Next to her, Marcus, a quiet graphic designer from Denver, offered a polite nod. Jasmine, a spirited schoolteacher from Miami, chatted animatedly with two others about her daughter's upcoming dance recital. I realized that everyone here was fighting their own private battles, and my funding empowered their journeys as much as it changed mine. As we exchanged smiles and small talk, I felt the tension ease from my shoulders. I recognized that funding this retreat wasn't a performance but an act of solidarity. And each genuine connection deepened my resolve to embrace the role with humility and compassion. After breakfast, we gathered in a circle of woven mats and tribal rugs laid upon soft sand. The host led a sharing ritual, inviting each person to speak honestly about the personal challenge they hoped to overcome during our week together. When it was my turn, my throat tightened. I swallowed hard, feeling the familiar knot of vulnerability forming. I'm here because I'm exhausted from trying to prove myself, I began. My voice trembling, I described how my career at a marketing firm stalled under relentless deadlines, how quitting had upset my father, and how his words, "She ruins everything," had become a cruel mantra fueling my fears of failure. I watched the others close their eyes in empathy, nodding in silence. Tears blurred my vision as I finished, and a hush fell over the sand. Jasmine reached out to squeeze my hand. Marcus offered a small smile. For the first time in years, I felt truly heard. Their acceptance washed away layers of shame I hadn't realized I was carrying. The solidarity of the group illuminated a path forward, one in which my father's judgment no longer dictated my worth. Midday brought a guided forest meditation hike through a canopy of towering palms and fragrant frangipani trees. We moved in silent procession along a narrow dirt path, our feet sinking into warm earth. My chest tightened as I remembered the marathon I had trained for but never finished because my father dismissed it as a vanity project. Each step felt heavy with unresolved resentment. Mid-hike, the host instructed us to pause by a moss-covered boulder and practice a grounding visualization. As I pressed my palm against the cool stone, a rush of childhood memories flooded my mind. Family picnics in Central Park, my father's booming laugh, the way he tousled my hair when I was little. Those memories clashed with more recent ones, arguments over my life choices, his disappointed frown when I announced the retreat. My breathing shook until the host's voice gently guided me back to the earth beneath my feet. Tears trickled down my cheeks as I let the grief and gratitude mingle. I realized that my relationship with my father, though broken in parts, still contained fragments of love I could choose to honor or to discard. By late afternoon, we convened on a wooden deck perched over turquoise waves for an open dialogue about restorative self-care. When the host asked who would lead a short group journaling exercise, I hesitated, then rose. Writing had always been my refuge. So I stepped to the center with a deck of blank journals for everyone. As I guided the group through prompts, when did you last feel truly alive? What parts of your identity feel hidden? I watched participants lean into the process. A few looked nervous, but many scribbled furiously, heads dipping, as ideas poured out onto paper. When time ended, pairs formed to read aloud their reflections. Marcus read his, sharing a dream of starting his own design studio, and Jasmine spoke about finding balance between career and motherhood. When it was my turn again, I read aloud a passage from my journal that described my hope of reconciling with my father, not to win his approval but to find inner peace. As the final words left my lips, an overwhelming sense of catharsis settled over me. Participants applauded softly, and I noticed tears glinting on Elena's cheeks. In that moment, I understood that my decision to fund this retreat had ignited more than personal renewal. It had sparked collective transformation. As dusk approached, I wandered along the shoreline with my journal tucked under my arm, the sky ablaze with coral and lavender hues. The sound of the surf felt like a lullaby coaxing me into introspection. I paused to watch the fireflies dance above the gathering tide pools. Their soft glow mirrored in the rippling water. I opened the journal to the page where I had written a letter to my father, words unspoken but deeply felt. I considered reading it aloud tomorrow during our final circle, weighing whether vulnerability might pave the path to forgiveness. My palms tingled with anticipation, and I realized that despite my father's declaration that I ruined everything, I had, in fact, created something extraordinary. It wasn't the retreat itself but the connections, stories, and moments of healing that defined success. I felt unstoppable and hopeful. I woke before dawn on the final day of our retreat, the horizon already glowing faintly pink over the ocean. My cabin was silent except for the distant lapping of waves and the occasional creak of the wooden platform beneath my feet. Clutching my journal, I stepped onto the sand and felt the cool grains between my toes. The air smelled of salt and frangipani blossoms carried on a gentle breeze. I walked slowly toward the shoreline, my thoughts drifting to the letter I'd written to Dad. It lay folded in my journal, each word a mixture of hope and fear. I paused at the water's edge, the tide creeping in to kiss my ankles. In that moment, I realized how far I'd come since boarding the Zoom call 6 days ago. My chest tightened with anticipation. Today, I would share my letter in our closing circle and, perhaps, begin a new chapter. By breakfast, the communal hall buzzed with quiet excitement and hesitant smiles. Plates of tropical fruit and chia pudding glistened under morning light. I greeted each participant, noticing their brightened eyes and ease in conversation. The host motioned me aside and whispered her gratitude for my sponsorship in gracious tones. I nodded, my throat tight with emotion. I felt less like a benefactor now and more like a sister in solidarity. During our morning yoga session on the deck, I focused on each stretch and breath as if grounding my resolve. The sun rose higher, warming my muscles and encouraging me to stand taller, to speak my truth without shame. When Savasana arrived, I remained present, letting supportive energy wash over me like gentle waves. Late morning found us gathered in a circle of driftwood chairs beneath swaying palms for our final airing ritual. The host invited each of us to reflect on the biggest insight gained during the retreat. Marcus spoke of reclaiming confidence in his creative vision. Jasmine described newfound acceptance of imperfection in her roles as teacher and mother. Elena shared how witnessing my vulnerability inspired her to pursue a long-delayed art residency. I listened, my heart swelling with pride and relief. When my turn came, I unfolded my letter and read slowly, deliberately, each sentence infused with love despite past hurt. I told Dad how his words "she ruins everything" had wounded me deeply but also ignited my determination to forge my own path. I spoke of forgiveness as an act of liberation, not reconciliation for his sake but my own. Silence followed my reading, thick and heavy like humid air before a summer storm. Then, one by one, participants offered nods, soft murmurs of approval rippling through the circle. The host placed her hand over her heart and commended my courage. Marcus reached out to squeeze my knee, his eyes glistening. Jasmine whispered that our stories were woven together, each strand strengthening the whole. I closed my eyes, overwhelmed by empathy and mutual respect. In that moment, I understood that healing was not linear but communal, a tapestry of voices supporting one another. My earlier fear of exposure dissolved, replaced by gratitude for this collective witness. After lunch, I requested a moment alone. On the beach, I carried my journal to a sheltered cove, sunlight dancing on the water's surface. I reread my letter and pressed it between pages of the journal, sealing my intentions. Then, with a deep breath, I dialed my father's number. On my cell, my pulse thundered as each ring echoed in my ears. When he finally answered, his voice sounded cautious, unfamiliar with tenderness. I spoke slowly, sharing what I'd read aloud in the circle. I told him I still loved him but no longer believed his condemnation. I invited him to meet me for coffee when I returned to Brooklyn. He hesitated, then agreed in a soft, surprised tone. Tears blurred my vision as hope blossomed within me. That evening, we gathered for a farewell bonfire under a sky spangled with stars. Driftwood logs circled the flickering flames, and lanterns cast dancing shadows on our faces. Each of us spoke one final affirmation, a promise to carry lessons of self-compassion and community back into our daily lives. When it was my turn, I stood and looked around at the faces that had become my chosen family. I thanked them for bearing witness, for sharing their truths, and for allowing me to fund not just a retreat, but a profound journey of mutual healing. As applause rose around me, I felt weightless, liberated from the burden of proving my worth. In that glow of firelight and camaraderie, I knew I had finally rewritten my story. I packed my journal and letter close to my heart, ready to return home, transformed and ready, at last, to rebuild a bridge with Dad on my own terms.